Hey guys, good afternoon. I'll keep this short and sweet. So I caught a interview on Vice News of former Secretary of Defense Mark Esper. Um, I want to speak on just a few things, a few points he made. He said that Trump used the military for everything. That like for building the wall, they didn't use Homeland Security, they used the military, other things, straight to the military. Um, when Trump first got in office, he had a lot of military folks in his cabinet and stuff like that. And that was because that's what fascists do. You surround yourself with military men and you use the military because he was trying to change society. But the problem is Trump's out of touch with this era. So his era, stuff he's talking about is kind of antiquated and kind of dated. And but what the idea was to like normalize it. So when you do stuff, it's you hate the military. It ain't that no, I disagree with Trump, disagree with things he's done. It's you hate the military. That's what fascists do. Because you're trying to make a society that's militarized. He said he would not resign, that he wanted to try to blunt bad ideas by Trump. I've heard this before with William Barr. It's interesting because I don't trust people like this, but it's interesting that so many people have come out and said that. I wouldn't trust this man with anything, but it's indicative that Trump can't use these people ever again. These are people in his highest positions, handpicked, and all of them, Mark Meadows and Mark Esper and what's the other guy I'm thinking about? Mad Dog Mattis. All these people, very high level officials, saying that Trump is unfit to be president. I guess he's right. I guess that I think Mark Milley especially did a lot to tamp that down. I will say this because I've heard the same stuff from William Barr. That he didn't want Trump to do anything stupid. It seems like as he went through phases, because if you look at Trump, you realize there were phases in his presidency. That you had when he basically cut the government down for his wall. When you had COVID, when you had the protests over George Floyd, there were phases during his presidency, and you had phases of him firing people because he fired a lot of people, and some positions remained unfilled. I think that because I kept saying as Trump was firing, I'm like, dude, he's going to eventually get fanatics. You get a cabinet of fanatics. And I was right. I mean, you look at Stephen Miller, out and out white supremacist in the White House. He was sending emails to a lady, conversating back and forth about Nazi racist stuff. And she leaked all of it. And it was like, I was talking about white people's birth rates dying and all kind of racist shit. And I don't care if someone thinks that way. It's just important to understand this is a person who was very influential on Trump and on the path the presidency was going to go. And he had these things in his mind, these kind of thoughts. It seems like as Trump did that and he fired more people, the people he filled the position with were less capable. You could say more partisan, whatever you want to call it, but they were definitely not as capable. And I'm talking about, what's the dude he had, just department guy, Sessions and all that. It seems like as time went on, people he put in were, they didn't have the luster. They didn't have it. And I get it. Trump wanted people to just do what he said, but you lose a little bit when you do that. And I didn't realize it, and I realize that now that when you're just firing people because they disagree with you, I ain't talking about like if you go out here and you get caught in a sex scandal, you get caught with a boy, you get caught with dope. If you got people that are qualified, you're firing them simply because they disagree with something you did, you're weakening your movement big time, because as men, we're going to disagree, and that's fine. You disagree with your family, that's fine. But what Trump did, and this is that CEO business of, if I don't get my way, then I'll just get rid of you. You can do it as a CEO. In the U.S. government, you can't do that because you never know what emergencies may arise. You need those people. He didn't go into Lafayette Park, and I wish Vice had hit him with that a little bit harder. They didn't hit him with it. Lafayette Park for me will always be the moment of realizing that this was, and will always be an illegitimate presidency in my mind. If you're not familiar, people were out there protesting. Lafayette Park is known for that. Trump walked outside. He had asked Mark Milley to come up there with his uniform, camouflage uniform on, fatigues, they used to call it that. Came out the fatigues, the hat, and all that, and they didn't even know he was going outside. They thought he was going outside to shake hands with the police and stuff. I think Nixon done that. I think Nixon shook hands with protesters and asked him about football or something. And Trump went outside and he did something. He made Capitol Police get violent. They got very violent. And they started gassing people and beating people. They were gassing photographers, beating photographers. I watched them beat the hell out of a photographer. And then William Barr lied and said they didn't gas people. And there were National Guard people there, captains that came out and said, no, they gassed people. And that they did not give any warning. They gave warning like 2-second warning. There was no warning. And that kind of like went by the wayside. That he did this. That he chose to take a situation that was peaceful and he chose to make that situation violent. And then they went and they gassed the church, shot something in the church, and went and arrested the priest and all. I just remember that. Just, realizing that this is a totally illegitimate presidency. If I remember correctly, Mark Esper, one of his secretaries, actually resigned after that and said that this was a totally an unnecessary use of force. And I've heard people around me have said that that's not common for people on them kind of jobs is resign. That's not normal. I'm not talking about getting sick or family. Like for someone to say that like I morally cannot stay here anymore. That's not normal. And like I said, that kind of went by the wayside with COVID and everything else was going on. I think that was another part of the normalization of fascism with Trump. People don't understand fascism isn't about laws. Fascism is about changing the minds of people and making things that are forbidden okay and justifying things. It isn't about if anyone at Lafayette Park went to jail or not. It's about I hurt these people and I showed the world what I'm willing to do. That's the point. With these different crimes they're accusing Trump with, it isn't about was he guilty or not. It's about getting a jury to understand this is okay. What I did is okay. It's just, it's proper, and I'm fighting for America, for our America. That's the point. It isn't about laws. So you have to stop looking at it as crimes. And understand that Trump was the general's cabinet, using the military for everything. All this stuff was about fascism, pure and simple. And he goes on and makes it, I'm going to end with this. Mark Esper says that Trump is not winnable. And one of the things that from just the start, from the end of the presidency, people coming out and, this is bad. Trump did this, Trump did that. William Barr was talking about him. And the guy in Georgia did the phone call. My opinion with them is they're not really against Trump. Recognize this is an immoral man who never had any business in public office, period. Forget the office of presidency. He never had any business with anything behind his name, period. That of course he would be using the presidential letterhead you're not president no more. Of course he put on his golf cart. This is, what did you expect? My thing is, with all these people, there's a sense, in my opinion, they're not morally disturbed by Trump. They don't see him as a morally abhorrent person. It's the way he did things. It's that if he hadn't talked to me that way, if he hadn't called me, if I hadn't had death threats for going against Trump, if he hadn't fired all these people, it's like if Hitler didn't have the Holocaust, if Germany didn't, if they didn't brutalize the people in Poland, it's that kind of shit. They're like, no, these are Nazis. That's wrong. This is bad. Certain things are just bad. You can't change them. You can't alter them. They're bad. That's Trump. And hearing Mark Esper say that he viewed Trump as a person that is not winnable is almost like saying you would be willing to continue this with another person, another figurehead. And that bothers me because the Trump stink is about more than just being loud and making jokes and having violent rallies and talking about water saving toilets. The Trump stink made America less safe, and it put us into a position that we will be vulnerable for COVID. That we'd be vulnerable, and he also served in the mockery of science. That's my issues with Trump. It wasn't about his tweets. I thought the tweets were funny. I thought this was funny. I didn't care about the decorum. I don't care about that decorum stuff. It was the funny stuff. Hamburger, Kofi. The point is, if you can't understand he was immoral from the very beginning, then you won't even understand why he's unwinnable. You get caught up in the smoke and the chaos, not recognizing that was his point all along. He just didn't expect COVID. He didn't expect George Floyd. And in a reasonable society, with a reasonable public office, that wouldn't matter. Because you would have things in place to protect the people, protect public safety, public health. You didn't have that. You had a president that ran on a culture war. When he was president, he was rearing it up, throwing coals, throwing wood in the fire every day. And when these events took place, he first took advantage of them. And it made these crises much worse. Thanks for listening.